Hello, students. Welcome to the Inventor Orientation lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be briefly going through the 3D design environment, and we'll be looking at some of the commands that you will be using most often. I'll explain how they work, what they do, and when you would go about using them. So what we have loaded in here is a 3D part. This is a part that you will be drawing in the future. It's called T-slide, and this is a relatively simple 3D object. So what you have in this 3D environment is a view cube and some viewing and zooming and orbiting tools. And these should look somewhat familiar to you. They are the same in AutoCAD. Obviously, in a 3D environment, things work a little different. So I'll show you the uh, the common features here that we're going to be using. So right here where my cursor is the view cube, and you can see this little home icon. It's an icon of a house. This is your home view when you are working in the 3D environment. So if you click on this button, this will always take you back to this home view, which is an isometric view. Next, you have different views. There's 6 views that would match views for an orthographic drawing. So you've got the top, and if you click that, it will show you the top view of the part. You can rotate that counterclockwise or clockwise as you need to. If you click these arrows, if you're in any view, they'll point you at different views. So we pointed over here at the right side view. We could click again and we'd be looking at the bottom of the part. If we click here, we would see the front of the part. And again, in any view, you can rotate the view by clicking these rotate buttons. If you get lost or confused with these views, simply press the home button. That will bring you back to your home view. So that's how that works. Over here in the view control panel, you have a pan function. So this works similar to what you've done with AutoCAD. When you have this feature selected, you can click and drag your mouse, and that will pan around your screen. Useful for if you have a big part, but you want to be close in to see details, this is a useful tool. You have a zoom control panel. So you can zoom in or out. You can zoom to a window. So if I click and drag my mouse, it zooms into the window that I've created. Here is a orbit tool. This tool is, in my opinion, it's good, but there's a better way. But we'll talk about this briefly. So you can do a constrained orbit, which brings up this center point kind of scope. And if you click on the quadrants of this circle you see here, it'll allow you to rotate the view. So when I click over here, I can rotate right. If I click here on the left, it rotates left. If I click on the top, I can rotate about that axis. Same thing if I click on the bottom. Okay, so those are like constrained orbits. If you want to do a free orbit, which lets you basically rotate this thing however you would like, you can click anywhere inside the circle, click once, and drag the mouse, and you're free orbiting around as you need. And that is the orbit tool. Now, I want to show you a different way of using the orbit tool. If I click back to go to my home view and I use my mouse, I can push my shift key on my keyboard. And if I push down the center track wheel on my mouse, it allows me to do a free orbit of the part as long as I'm holding down the center wheel of my mouse. If you did not hold down the shift key and you pushed down and held this track wheel of your mouse, it will let you use pans. So these are the better ways to navigate around your drawing, is using the track wheel and the built-in functionality of the mouse. That will let you zoom and orbit as you need to while you're in an operation. So for example, if you wanted to extrude a surface, but it was hard to see and you needed to zoom and pan to a different area and orbit to a different area, you could use the mouse. And that's a frequent thing. It happens all the time. So over here on the left side of the screen, outside of the 3D environment, you have a browser window. So the browser window has some folders, and the ones we're going to look at are actually this origin folder and these extrusions. So let's start with the origin folder. If I open that folder, if I expand it by clicking the plus sign, this will let me see where I have different work planes in my drawing. This will also help me identify the axes that are used in this drawing. And in a 3D environment, you will use an X, a Y, and a Z axis. You'll also see those over here on the origin icon. You can see Y is this green axis, Z is blue here, and X is actually pointing towards us, and it is red. Okay, so if I look at this part, I can see that I'm using the XZ plane, which I can view from the top of the part. So I've drawn this thing, you could think of it on a flat piece of paper. I drew a profile and then I extruded it up towards me. And we'll talk about what extruding means in a little while. Let's go back to the home view and we will see the other work planes here. So you've got X, Y, which would basically show us a front view of the part. And I clicked front on the view cube so I could look straight on at that XY plane. The other plane we have not seen yet is your YZ. And you'll see YZ, you could look at that straight on from the right side of the part. So again, these work planes match orthographic views for a part. So one plane you could associate with a plan view. Another plane would be your front view or back view, and the third would be your right or your left view of the part. So outside of this origin folder, we've got these features for our part, and they're called Extrusion 1, Extrusion 2, and Extrusion 3. So let's look at this part again. If I click and hold Extrusion 1, not click and hold, just click actually, you can see what this is. So if I expand that, I can see that this started off as a sketch. So in the blue outline, you can see the original sketch for my part. That is how this part started. And in next period's lesson, we will be talking about sketching. We'll actually sketch this part and we'll extrude it. So that's the first extrusion. Basically, it was a T block. The next extrusion, which we will expand, and you can see when I click on extrusion 2 here in the browser, it is highlighted on my part in blue, and these are the faces of it. See the faces of it turning green as my cursor moves over them. If I expand that feature, that 3D feature, you'll see that there is also likewise a sketch associated with it. and you can see my sketch here. So this is a sketch of a cutout we put in this part. It's a rectangle combined with a circle, and it is extruded down to a depth. The third extrusion, as you might have guessed, is the other cavity on this part. So if we look at the part from the bottom isometrically, we can see this extrusion number 3 has been highlighted when I clicked on it. And if I expand that, I will see that that extrusion started out as a sketch. So my sketch essentially was a rectangle on the face of the part, and you can see there's some offsets here from the edges, and that was used to create that feature. So I will collapse these extrusions and the origin folder, and I'll show you something else. I'll go back to the home view, and one thing I will do is I can see my sketch 1. Actually, that's my sketch 3. That is visible, and we'll just see if we can turn that off. Okay, so that's hidden from view. It's not going to confuse us any longer. Yeah, so you can see here with the different extrusions, the different features of this 3D part, that one thing happened before another thing happened before the third thing happened. So there was a sequence of operations that was used to create this part. Basically, we created the T-block, and then we created the upper cavity in the T-block. And lastly, we created the lower cavity. And if I were to click on this end of part feature, I could actually drag it up to see what existed right after extrusion 1. This gives you an idea of how the part was actually developed. So this can be useful if you're looking at a file and evaluating it to see how the designer went through and created that part. Again, if I click on end of part and I drag it down to extrusion 3, I can see all 3 of my parts. Or if I just want to see the first 2 extrusions, I could put it here. And you can see that that is the part, but there is no cavity in the bottom of it. So it's kind of a neat feature. It shows you the sequence of how things were developed. Okay, so the next thing we can look at is the line, circle, arc, and rectangle tools. And these are basically sketching tools. So you'll see up here, I've got the main toolbar. I'm going to click on Sketch to see my sketching tools. And this should look familiar to you because I know you've all used AutoCAD. So you can see there's line, there's circle, there's arc, there's rectangle, there's fillet, text. And the ones that we'll use the most will be line, circle, and rectangle. So I can actually start a new sketch to just show you how these features work, how these tools work. So line, oh, 1 second, guys. Let me back out of here and open up Origin. Bear with me. I'm going to click that plane and I'm going to use this feature, create sketch, to start sketching on this plane. Now see with the line tool, again, similar to AutoCAD, you would click once, you would pull the line up and you can see that it's snapped to 90 degrees. And it could snap to 0 degrees. You might also see below and to the right of my cursor a little icon, and that icon is showing that the line is constrained horizontally. And we will talk about constraints a little later. If I go back up 90 degrees, it will snap to that increment. And again, below and to the right of my cursor, you can see another little icon showing that the line is constrained vertically in the current orientation. So if I click again, that will draw the line. And this is very similar to AutoCAD. I can keep creating lines until I've made a box. Again, below and to the right of the cursor, you'll see a little icon that shows perpendicular. And you can also see those icons attached to the corners of this rectangle that I've just drawn. So there you have a box. If I wanted to put a circle in the box, I could just kind of randomly place it and click again to create my circle. Now I've drawn a shape. Here's a basic shape. Next thing you can do in Sketch, which is very, very cool, is you can start applying dimensions. So if I want this box to be 70 millimeters wide, I can use this dimension tool. I can click on the line that I want to dimension. It will show me what it is currently, but when I let go of my mouse, it will bring up this input box. So now I could actually put a value that I wanted. And in this case, I'll put 100 millimeters. For the circle, I would like to locate this in the center of my box. So I'm going to click the circle and give it a diameter of 30 millimeters. Now I'm going to locate it. So we will reference against this edge. Half of 70 is 35, so I'll input that value, and you can see that it moved the circle. It snapped it to the center, and we need one more dimension to locate it in the center of the 100 millimeter dimension, so that would be 50. There is a rectangle with a circle in the center. Okay, so if I was done this sketch at this point and I wanted to move on to extruding, I would click this big green check mark, finish sketch. When I do that, it automatically goes to the home view for my drawing. And here's my sketch, fully dimensioned. And the next thing I would typically do is I would give this sketch, I would turn it into a feature. Now, when I say feature, I mean a 3D profile. And to create a 3D profile, what you'll most commonly be using is the extrude command. So if I click this button, it's going to ask me for a face that we want to extrude. And you can see if I click on the part, I can pick a face that will get extruded. This is a rectangle with the hole in the center. So I'm going to pick the rectangle portion. And now you'll see that it's asking for a direction of extrusion and a value of as to the height. So I can change the direction of the extrusion by clicking these buttons here. You have default. If you wanted to go the other way, you could click the arrow that goes in the opposite direction. If you wanted to extrude symmetrically, you could use this dual arrow button. And this is handy if you want to have the work plane, which you can see here, in the center of the part. And we will talk later about why you would want to do that. In this case, I'm going to simply use this default extrusion, and I am going to put in a value of 25 millimeters, which is basically an inch, and I will click OK. So there you have it. We have now extruded a part. Other things you can do and that you will be using are tools like this hole tool. If I hadn't drawn my circle as part of the sketch, I could use this hole feature, and this will allow me to add holes to the part. So what you can see here is it's looking for an input. So this is again where it wants you to select a face where the hole for your part will go. In this case, let's put it on the side. Now it's done a few things here. It's selected the face and it's transferred a hole through that face, through the part, and actually right through the other part. So I wouldn't necessarily want a hole that went through every single part I have in this file. But I might want this hole to actually go right through the part. So we'll do a couple things here. One thing is we'll give this hole a diameter. And what I like to do with this tool is before I hit enter, I make sure I've finished locating the hole. So I've typed in 10, but I have not hit the enter key yet. I want to locate this from this top edge here, and I want to center it in this part. So I'm going to click on the crosshairs of the part, and I'm going to click on the top edge, and that will allow me to input a value, a dimension value for how I want this located relative to the top edge of the part. And in this case, I want it to be 12.5 millimeters, so that would be center. I'm going to click on the crosshairs again, and this edge, and now I am going to locate it off of this edge, and I'm just going to put in a random value of 25 millimeters. Again, I have not hit enter yet, because once I hit enter, I will close off the command and I'm not editing it anymore. Now, if you do that, it's not the end of the world, because you can definitely come back in and edit features. It's relatively easy, but why create more work for yourself? So the one thing I know I want to do is I don't want the hole to travel through both the parts. I just want it to go through this particular part. So I can use this termination value here. You'll see where my cursor is. And currently selected is through all. So this hole will go through everything. I don't want that. What you should do as best practice is give a termination spot for your holes. And in this case, I'm going to pick this face here. So I've just done an orbit with my mouse. And now you can see here this red input value is asking me to select a surface where I want the hole to go to. In this case, I want it to go to that face. So I've just clicked on the face, and now I'm ready to go. See, my hole goes through the part, but it does not travel through this other part. I am going to click OK, or enter would work. And now you can see I have a rectangular box with 2 holes in it. A couple other handy 3D tools that you have available are Fillet and Chamfer. So Fillet, if you'll recall, puts a rounded, it takes an edge and it rounds it. So this is a common practice on most parts. An edge that's 90 degrees is actually sharp. So if you had any kind of product that someone was going to use and handle, which is most of them, you'll generally want to take the edge off a part. In this case, I can select all the edges that I want to fillet, and I can select them all at once. And then I can put in a radius for my fillet. So I just want to break the edge here. I'm going to put in 1 millimeter and click OK. So now you'll see that these fillets have been added to my part. Another thing you could do is you could actually click on the edge and you see 2 icons pop up. Okay, common things, that operations for an edge. So create fillet and create chamfer. If we wanted to put a chamfer on here, we could click that button. Now, chamfer is like a fillet, but instead of being a rounded radius, it is a flat slope. So if you had 2 faces coming together at 90 degrees and you wanted to break that 90-degree edge, you could do it just with a 45-degree chamfer. And let's see what that looks like. So we're going to use a chamfer of 2 millimeters inset from the edge on each face, and we'll click OK. And let's try that again. We've got an edge, we've got a distance, and I want to apply that chamfer, and it's not cooperating. So let's try this again. We'll close out the command, go to the bottom of the part, and grab an edge, chamfer. We have the edges, we have the edge here, and let's see what happens. Okay, one more time. We'll select my edge. I'll come here and use this chamfer. And I can see that it's kind of going for the face of this part here. And that might be causing our issue. So let's rotate around. Let's go for this edge. And see what happens. Ta-da. Wow, third time's a charm, but here you go. So that's what a chamfer looks like. You can see instead of a radius, this is a flat surface that we've created. Let's look at a fillet to see the difference. I'll rotate the part and I'm going to zoom in along this edge, and you can see that it's got a curved profile as opposed to straight. Okay, so those are the basic tools that we'll be using initially. And you can see here in the browser, we've got a few new extrusions. Well, we have one new extrusion, which if I zoom out and go to the home view, is our new part, basically. So the solid block with the hole in it. You see when we use the hole feature, we added this hole that goes through the part. We've added fillets and we have added a chamfer. Again, if I didn't want to see all this stuff that I just did, I take the end of the part and you should see just the T slide. Okay, so I will end the recording here. Hopefully this is a useful resource for you.